Chapter 1. Blood on the Snow. The blizzard had been raging for 3 days. Mira Castellan pressed her forehead against the frost-covered window of the cabin, watching the pine trees bend under the weight of ice and wind. She'd come to the Thornridge Mountains to disappear, to let the world forget her name, her face, the scandal that had destroyed everything she'd built in the city. 6 months ago, she'd been a rising journalist. Now she was a ghost, haunting a borrowed cabin at the edge of nowhere. The isolation suited her, or so she told herself. She pulled her wool sweater tighter and turned from the window, padding across the creaking floorboards toward the fireplace. The flames were dying. She knelt to add another log when she heard it. A sound that didn't belong to the storm. A howl. Not the distant cry of wind through the mountains, but something closer. Something alive and suffering. Mira froze, her hand hovering over the firewood. The howl came again, weaker this time, almost human in its desperation. Her rational mind screamed at her to lock the door and ignore it. Nothing good happened to women who went into blizzards chasing strange sounds in the dark. But she'd heard that kind of pain before. The kind that meant someone, or something, was dying. She was moving before she could stop herself, pulling on her heaviest coat, wrapping a scarf around her face, grabbing the emergency medical kit she'd packed when she first arrived. Her grandfather had been a veterinarian. She'd spent enough summers in his clinic to know basic trauma care. The cold hit her like a physical blow when she opened the door. Snow immediately plastered against her face, the wind trying to shove her back inside. She clicked on her high-powered flashlight and pushed forward, following the sound. It took her 20 minutes to find the source, and when she did, her breath caught in her throat. A wolf lay crumpled in a drift of blood-stained snow. But not just any wolf. This creature was massive, easily twice the size of any natural wolf she'd ever seen in documentaries. Its fur was silver-black, matted with blood and ice. Deep gashes ran along its flank, and one of its legs was bent at an unnatural angle. The animal's eyes, startling amber, almost gold, fixed on her with an intelligence that made her skin prickle. Those eyes held something she recognized. Betrayal. Abandonment. "Easy," Mira whispered, dropping to her knees beside the wolf despite every instinct screaming danger. "I'm going to help you." The wolf's lip curled, revealing teeth that could tear her apart. A low growl rumbled from its chest. "I know," she said softly. "I know you're scared. But you're going to die out here if I don't do something, and I'm not going to let that happen." She'd seen enough death, caused enough if she was honest with herself. The memory of her ex-fiancé's face when her article went live, the one that exposed his family's corruption but destroyed his political career, still haunted her dreams. She'd chosen truth over love, and it had cost her everything. Maybe saving one life could balance the scales, just a little. The wolf watched her with those eerie golden eyes as she carefully opened her kit. Its breathing was shallow, labored. She could see its ribs expanding with effort. "I'm going to touch you now," she murmured, keeping her voice steady and low. "I know it's going to hurt, but I need to see how bad it is." Her hands were shaking, from cold or fear she couldn't tell, as she gently probed the wounds. The gashes were deep but clean, as if made by claws rather than bullets or traps. The broken leg was the worst of it. She'd need to splint it somehow, stop the bleeding, get the animal warm. An impossible task in the middle of a blizzard, miles from any veterinary clinic. But impossible had become her specialty lately. "I can't fix everything out here," she told the wolf, whose growling had quieted to weak whimpers. "But my cabin isn't far. If you can tolerate me for just a little longer." She had no idea how she was going to move a creature this size. The wolf had to weigh at least 200 pounds. But as she slid her arms beneath its massive frame, preparing to try, something extraordinary happened. The wolf shifted its weight, helping her, actually cooperating. Those golden eyes met hers again, and Mira felt something shift in her chest. A strange pull, like a thread connecting them. Like recognition, though she'd never seen this animal before in her life. "That's it," she breathed. "Work with me." It took nearly an hour to get the wolf back to the cabin, dragging it on her grandfather's old emergency sled she'd found in the shed. By the time she hauled the creature through her door, her muscles were screaming and her lungs burned from the frigid air. The wolf collapsed on the rug in front of the fireplace, sides heaving. Mira quickly built up the fire, then returned to her patient with warm water, antiseptic, and steady hands. She worked through the night, cleaning wounds, stitching where necessary, splinting the broken leg with boards from her firewood pile and strips of an old bedsheet. The wolf never snapped at her, never tried to bite, though she saw pain flicker in those golden eyes with every touch. "Who did this to you?" she whispered as she wrapped the final bandage. "What kind of monster hunts something like you?" The wolf's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion finally claiming it. Mira sat back on her heels, suddenly aware that she'd just brought an apex predator into her home. The rational part of her brain was screaming that she'd lost her mind. But as she looked at the now sleeping creature, its chest rising and falling with steady breaths, all she felt was a strange sense of purpose. For the first time in 6 months, she'd done something that mattered. She grabbed a blanket and curled up in the armchair nearby, too wired to sleep, too worried to leave the wolf alone. Outside, the blizzard raged on. Inside, in the firelight, a woman who'd fled from her past kept watch over a wounded creature who was far more than he seemed. Neither of them knew that in a fortress of stone and shadow 50 miles north, the Alpha King had just received word that his missing brother had been found, and that a human woman had dared to interfere with pack justice. Chapter 2. When monsters wake, Mira woke to silence. The kind of silence that only comes after a storm has exhausted itself, leaving the world muffled and new beneath a blanket of snow. Pale morning light filtered through the frost-covered windows, painting everything in shades of silver and blue. She was still curled in the armchair, her neck stiff and aching. The fire had died to embers, and the wolf was gone. Mira's heart lurched. She scrambled to her feet, scanning the room frantically. The blood-stained rug remained, the torn bandages, the makeshift splint she'd so carefully constructed. But no massive silver-black creature. "No, no, no," she breathed, moving toward the door. Had it dragged itself outside to die? Had she done all that work just to... A sound from the bathroom stopped her cold. Water running. The shower. Mira's blood turned to ice. She'd locked that door last night, hadn't she? No. She'd been too focused on the wolf to think about security. But even if she hadn't, how could the wolf have... The water shut off. She should run. Grab her keys, get to her truck, drive until she hit civilization. Instead, she found herself frozen in place as the bathroom door opened and steam billowed out. A man emerged. Mira's breath caught. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a lean, powerful build that spoke of controlled strength. His skin was bronze, marked with scars both old and new. Dark hair, almost black, fell damp to his shoulders. But it was his eyes that trapped her, made her forget every rational thought. Golden. The exact shade of amber she'd stared into all night while she'd stitched and bandaged a dying wolf. He wore nothing but a towel wrapped low around his hips, revealing a torso carved with muscle and marked with fresh bandages. Her bandages, though they'd been adjusted with more skill than her frantic field medicine. A splint still supported his left leg, but he moved on it with only a slight limp. They stared at each other across the small cabin, neither speaking. "You're not a wolf," Mira finally whispered, her voice raw. His lips quirked in something that might have been amusement, if not for the wariness in his eyes. When he spoke, his voice was deep, resonant, with a quality that made her skin prickle with awareness. "I'm not just a wolf. That's impossible. So is a human woman dragging a 200-pound predator through a blizzard in the middle of the night." He tilted his head, studying her with an intensity that made her feel exposed. Yet here we are. Mira's mind was racing, trying to catch up, with a reality that had just shattered every belief she'd held about the world. Werewolves, shapeshifters, things that shouldn't exist outside of fiction and folklore. "I'm going to sit down now," she said faintly, because her legs were suddenly unreliable. She sank back into the armchair. The man, the wolf, moved to the couch with careful, measured steps. Despite the injury, despite having been half dead mere hours ago, he moved with a predator's grace. "My name is Cale," he said quietly. "Cale Thornridge." "Thornridge," Mira repeated. "Like the mountains. My family has claimed these lands for 300 years. His golden eyes never left her face. "We protect them. We keep the balance between the human world and ours." "Ours," she echoed. "You mean there are more of you?" "Hundreds, maybe thousands, scattered across the continent." Cale leaned back slightly, wincing at the movement. "We live in packs, follow ancient laws, and remain hidden from your kind. For everyone's safety." "Then why?" Mira's voice cracked. She cleared her throat and tried again. "Why were you dying in my forest? Who hurt you?" Something dark flickered across his face. His jaw tightened, and for a moment she saw the wolf in him. The barely contained violence, the rage simmering beneath civilized skin. "My pack," he said finally. "Or rather, the wolves who were supposed to be my pack." The bitterness in his voice was palpable. Mira found herself leaning forward despite her fear, drawn by the pain she heard beneath his words. "I don't understand." Kyle was quiet for a long moment, his gaze distant. When he spoke again, his voice was carefully controlled. "In our world, strength determines everything. Alphas lead, betas follow, omegas..." He paused, something complicated crossing his features. "Omegas are rare, valuable, and often seen as weak." "You're an omega," Mira said softly, understanding dawning. "I'm an omega born to an alpha bloodline," Cale corrected. And now she heard the old wound beneath his words. A disappointment, a stain on a legacy that stretches back centuries. "My brother inherited the pack, the power, the respect. I inherited nothing but resentment." He met her eyes again, and the raw honesty in his gaze made her chest ache. 3 days ago, pack hunters cornered me in the Northern Territories. They said I'd violated pack law by crossing into their hunting grounds. But the truth is simpler. My brother wanted me gone, and they were happy to oblige. "They tried to kill you," Mira whispered, horror creeping through her. "They succeeded nearly." Cale's hand unconsciously moved to his bandaged ribs. "I should have died out there. Would have, if not for you." The weight of his words settled between them. Mira thought of the wolf's golden eyes staring up at her in the snow, the desperate howl that had drawn her out into the storm. Had some part of her known? Had she sensed that this was more than just an animal in need? "Why didn't you change back sooner?" she asked. "Before I found you?" "I couldn't." Cale's expression grew troubled. When we're badly injured, our bodies instinctively hold wolf form. It heals faster, survives longer. But I was too far gone. If I'd shifted back then, the transformation itself would have killed me. "But you shifted now." "Because you saved my life." His eyes held hers with an intensity that made her breath hitch. You gave me enough strength to survive the change, to become human again." The way he said it, with such quiet reverence, made something warm and dangerous unfurl in Mira's chest. "I'm not a hero," she said quickly, looking away. I couldn't leave you there." "Why not?" The question was simple but loaded with meaning. Mira struggled to find an answer that made sense. "Because I know what it's like," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "To be left behind. To be considered worthless by the people who were supposed to love you." She felt his gaze, on her but couldn't look up. If she did, she might see pity, and she couldn't bear that. "What happened to you?" Kyle asked softly. Mira laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I told the truth, that's all. I exposed corruption and it cost me everything. My career, my relationship, my home. The man I was going to marry looked at me like I was a stranger, like I'd betrayed him instead of choosing integrity." "You chose what was right over what was easy," Kale said. "That takes courage." "It takes stupidity," Mira corrected, finally meeting his eyes. "Heroes in stories get rewarded. In real life, they just get exiled." Something passed between them then. A recognition, an understanding. Two wounded souls, cast out by the worlds they'd once belonged to. "You should leave," Mira said abruptly, though the words felt wrong coming out. "When you're strong enough, I mean. Your pack will come looking." Kale's expression darkened. "They'll come regardless. The question is when." "Then you definitely need to leave." "I can't." She stood up, pacing. "I can't be involved in whatever supernatural politics." "You became involved the moment you pulled me from that snow," Kyle interrupted, his voice hard now. "My brother doesn't leave loose ends, Mira." "And a human who knows our secret? Who saved an Omega he wanted dead?" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. Mira felt cold dread settle in her stomach. "He'll come for both of us." "Yes." Kyle rose from the couch, moving toward her despite his injuries. He stopped just close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. "Which is why you need to trust me. Let me protect you." "I don't even know you." "You knew me enough to risk your life in a blizzard," he said quietly. His hand lifted, and for a heart-stopping moment she thought he might touch her face. Instead, his fingers hovered in the air between them. "I felt it, Mira. When you found me. When our eyes met. You felt it too." She had. That strange pull, like a thread connecting them. Like destiny reaching out with invisible hands. "What was that?" she whispered. Kale's expression was troubled, conflicted. "Something that shouldn't be possible. Something that will complicate everything." Before she could ask what he meant, a howl split the morning air. Not close, but not far enough. And it was answered by another. Then another. Kale's entire body went rigid. "They're here." Mira's blood turned to ice. "Your pack?" "Worse?" His golden eyes met hers, and she saw genuine fear there for the first time. "My brother's personal hunters, and they've picked up our scent." Chapter 3. Run or Stand. Kale moved with startling speed despite his injuries, crossing to the window in 3 strides. He peered through the frost, his body coiled with tension, every muscle ready to spring into action. "How many?" Mira heard herself ask, her voice steadier than she felt. 3, maybe 4. His jaw clenched. "They're circling, trying to cut off escape routes. They'll wait until nightfall to attack. Darkness makes them stronger, bolder." "We have until sunset then." Mira's mind was already racing, falling into the calculated thinking that had once made her an excellent investigative journalist. Assess the situation, identify the resources, find the angle. That gives us maybe 8 hours. Kale turned to look at her, surprise flickering across his features. You're not panicking. I panic later, Mira said, moving toward her bedroom. Right now I'm packing. You said they'll come for both of us, which means staying here is suicide, so we run. Mira? Unless you have a better plan? She grabbed her emergency duffel from the closet, started throwing in clothes, her laptop, the cash she kept hidden in an old book. Paranoia from her journalism days. Always have an escape route, her mentor had taught her. Never be trapped. She hadn't expected to need that advice quite so literally. Kale limped into the doorway, watching, her with an unreadable expression. Running won't work. They're trained trackers. They'll follow our scent for hundreds of miles if necessary. Then we make it difficult for them. Mira zipped the bag and faced him. I know these mountains. I've spent 6 months exploring every trail, every back road. There's an old mining town about 40 miles west, abandoned, but the tunnels go deep. If we can reach it before dark, the mines won't hide our scent. No, but they'll mask our direction. Multiple exits, branching paths. We split up inside, create false trails, buy ourselves time. She shouldered the bag, then grabbed her grandfather's old hunting rifle from above the door. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it's better than waiting here like sitting ducks. Something shifted in Kale's expression. Respect, maybe, mixed with something darker. You've thought about escape routes before. It wasn't a question. Mira's grip tightened on the rifle. I've thought about a lot of things, survival being the main one. For a moment, they stood there. Two damaged people recognizing the same scars in each other. Then Kale nodded slowly. The mines could work, but there's something you need to know first. He moved closer, his voice dropping low. These hunters, they won't just kill us, Mira. They'll make an example of us. My brother wants to prove that no one defies his authority, not even an Omega, and especially not a human who dared to interfere. What are you saying? I'm saying that if they catch us, your death won't be quick. His golden eyes held hers, unflinching. And what they'll do to me first, to make you watch. He stopped, his throat working. You should leave. Take your truck, drive south. Don't stop until you hit civilization. I'll lead them north, away from you. Mira stared at him. You can barely walk. I can shift. The wolf heals faster. The wolf that nearly died 24 hours ago. She shook her head. No, we go together or not at all. Why? The word came out harsh, almost desperate. You don't owe me anything. You saved my life. That debt is paid. There's no reason for you to risk everything for a stranger. You're not a stranger anymore. The words came out before Mira could stop them, and they hung in the air between them, heavy with meaning neither was ready to examine. Besides, I'm done running from fights. Kale's expression was tortured. This isn't your fight. You made it my fight when you told me what they'll do if they catch us. Mira checked the rifle, making sure it was loaded. I'm not a damsel waiting to be rescued, Kale. I'm a journalist who's investigated drug cartels and human trafficking rings. I've been threatened by people with a lot more resources than your brother. And I'm still here. Those were humans. These are apex predators who live by laws you can't comprehend. Then teach me. She moved to stand directly in front of him, close enough to see the flecks of amber in his golden eyes. You want to protect me? Fine. But that means trusting me enough to let me help protect myself. Tell me what I'm dealing with. Kale studied her for a long moment, and Mira watched something like admiration war with fear in his gaze. Shifters operate on instinct and hierarchy, he finally said. Alphas lead through dominance and strength. They command absolute loyalty, or at least absolute obedience. My brother Darius is the Alpha King of the Thornridge Pack. His word is law. And he wants you dead. He wants me erased. There's a difference. Kale's hands clenched into fists. An Omega born to Alpha blood is considered an abomination, a weakness in the bloodline. Most packs would have killed me at birth, but my mother, his voice caught. She protected me as long as she could. When she died, that protection ended. Mira felt her chest tighten. How long have you been running? 5 years. I've stayed on the edges of pack territory, never settling, never challenging his authority. But recently, he hesitated. The pull grew stronger. Something kept drawing me back to these mountains. The pull, Mira repeated, remembering his cryptic words earlier. You said we felt something when I found you. What did you mean? Kale's jaw worked, as if he were wrestling with whether to tell her. Another howl echoed outside, closer this time, and he flinched. We need to move, he said instead of answering. Now. Mira wanted to push, to demand answers, but he was right. Questions could wait until they weren't being hunted. I need to get dressed, Kale said, glancing down at the towel. And we need to mask our scent as much as possible. There's men's clothes in the back closet. My grandfather's. Should fit you. As he moved to find them, Mira went to the bathroom and grabbed everything that might help. Bleach, coffee grounds, strong-smelling herbs from her attempts at cooking. Will these work? Kale nodded as he emerged in jeans and a flannel shirt that was slightly too tight across his shoulders. The stronger the smell, the better. It won't fool them completely, but it might buy us time. They worked quickly, spreading the concoctions around the cabin, creating false trails leading in different directions. Kale moved with practiced efficiency despite his limp, and Mira realized this wasn't the first time he'd done this. How many times had he run? How many close calls had he survived? Ready? Kyle asked, shouldering the pack she'd prepared. Mira took one last look at the cabin, her sanctuary for the past 6 months, the place where she'd tried to heal. Now it felt like a tomb waiting to be sealed. Ready? They stepped out into the crystalline morning. The sun was bright, the sky painfully blue, the world beautiful in the way it only was after a storm. Fresh snow crunched under their boots as they made their way to her truck. That's when Mira saw them. 4 massive wolves stood at the edge of the clearing, spread in a semicircle. Each was nearly as large as Kale had been, their fur ranging from midnight black to steel gray. But their eyes were all the same cold, predatory yellow, and they were focused entirely on Kale. Get in the truck, Kale said quietly, his voice taking on a strange quality, deeper, rougher. Now. Kale! Now! The wolves moved as one, converging with terrifying speed. Mira ran for the truck, fumbling with her keys, her hands shaking. Behind her, she heard the sickening sound of bones cracking and reshaping. She risked a glance back and saw Kale, no longer a man but a massive silver-black wolf, positioning himself between her and the hunters. Even injured, even outnumbered, he stood his ground, protecting her. The lead hunter, a black wolf with scarred muzzle, growled something that sounded almost like words. Kale's response was a snarl that made the air vibrate. Mira's hand closed around the rifle. She raised it, aimed at the black wolf. The crack of the gunshot split the air. The black wolf yelped and stumbled, blood blooming on its shoulder. Not a kill shot. She wasn't trying to kill, just to wound, to give them a chance. The other 3 wolves turned toward her, and Mira saw her death in their yellow eyes. Then Kale was there, launching himself at the nearest hunter with feral rage. The 2 wolves collided in a tangle of teeth and claws, rolling across the snow. Go! Kale's voice somehow emerged from his wolf throat, distorted but unmistakable. Drive! But Mira was already moving, engine roaring to life. She threw open the passenger door. Get in! For a heartbeat, Kale hesitated. Then he broke away from the fight, blood matting his silver fur, and leaped into the truck. Mira slammed the accelerator, snow and gravel spraying as they fishtailed onto the narrow mountain road. In her rearview mirror, she saw the 3 remaining wolves giving chase, their powerful bodies eating up the distance with impossible speed. "Can they catch us?" she asked, her heart hammering. The wolf beside her, Kale, met her eyes. And somehow, impossibly, she understood his answer. Yes, but not before dark. They had until sunset to reach the mines. The real race had just begun. Chapter 4. Truths in Motion. The mountain road twisted like a serpent's spine, narrow and treacherous beneath a fresh layer of snow. Mira's knuckles were white on the steering wheel, her eyes darting between the road ahead and the rearview mirror where, for now, no wolves appeared. Beside her, Kale had shifted back to human form, his breathing labored. Blood seeped through the borrowed flannel from reopened wounds. The transformation had cost him, but he'd done it anyway. To protect her. "You're bleeding again," Mira said, navigating a particularly sharp turn. "I'll heal." His voice was rough, strained. "Keep driving. The splint came off when you shifted." "I know." Mira glanced at him, saw the way he held himself rigid against the pain, and felt something twist in her chest. This man, this being, had thrown himself at 4 trained killers without hesitation. For her. A stranger he'd known less than a day. "Why did you do that?" The question came out quieter than she'd intended. "Do what?" "Fight them. You were outnumbered, injured. You could have just shifted and run. You're faster than my truck." Kale was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the passing trees. No, I'm not faster than your truck. Not anymore." He touched his ribs gingerly. "These injuries, they're not healing the way they should. Something's wrong." Mira's stomach dropped. "Wrong how?" "I don't know. Maybe the damage was too severe. Maybe—" He stopped, his jaw tightening. "It doesn't matter. What matters is getting you somewhere safe." "Stop doing that." "Doing what?" "Acting like I'm the only one who matters here." Mira took her eyes off the road long enough to meet his gaze. "You're hurt. You need medical attention. Real medical attention. Maybe we should head to a hospital instead of hiding in abandoned mines." Kale's laugh was bitter. "And tell them what? That I'm a werewolf being hunted by my own kind? That I need silver-free surgical equipment and a doctor who understands shifter physiology?" "There must be—" Mira fumbled for words. "I don't know, shifter doctors. Someone in your world who could help?" "There are healers," Kale admitted, "but they're all pack-affiliated. Going to one would be like turning myself in directly to Darius." The hopelessness in his voice made Mira's chest ache. She thought of her own exile, her own isolation, but at least she'd had a choice, however painful. Kale had been born into rejection, had spent his entire life running from people who should have protected him. "Your mother," Mira said softly. "You said she protected you. What was she like?" Kale's expression shifted. Surprise, then something more vulnerable. "Why do you want to know?" "Because you're not just some werewolf in my truck. You're a person. And I want to understand." The silence stretched between them, filled only with the rumble of the engine and the crunch of snow under tires. Mira thought he wouldn't answer, that she'd pushed too far. Then, "She was kind," Kyle said quietly. "In a world that values strength above all else, she chose kindness. The pack saw it as weakness. My father, the previous alpha, saw it as defiance." His hands curled into fists. "She was the only one who didn't look at me like I was broken. Like I was less." "You're not broken," Mira said fiercely. The words surprised her with their intensity. Kyle's head turned, his golden eyes searching her face. You don't know what I am, Mira. What it means to be Omega. We're meant to be subordinate, compliant. We calm tensions, mediate conflicts. We're supposed to make others comfortable, never challenge, never lead. His voice grew harsh. And when an Omega is born to alpha blood, it's considered nature's mistake, a cruel joke. That's not a mistake, that's just different. Mira navigated around a fallen branch, her mind working. In my world, we call that diversity. Different strengths for different situations. A pack that only values one kind of power is a pack that's going to fail when circumstances change. Tell that to Darius. Maybe I will. Kyle actually smiled. Just a fraction, but it transformed his face. You're serious? I've faced down worse than an alpha king. Mira thought of the crime lords she'd interviewed, the corrupt politicians she'd exposed. Though, I'll admit, they probably couldn't turn into giant wolves. That does complicate negotiations. They fell into silence again, but this time it felt different. Easier. The adrenaline was fading, leaving exhaustion in its wake, but also something else. A strange sense of comfort in each other's presence. Can I ask you something? Kale said eventually. Seems fair? Earlier you said you chose truth over everything. The article you wrote, what was it? About? Mira's hands tightened on the wheel. She'd known this question would come eventually. My fiancé's family. The Castellan Foundation. Supposedly a charity organization helping at-risk youth. In reality, it was a front for embezzlement. Millions of dollars meant for foster care and education programs. Just gone. Funneled into offshore accounts. And you exposed them. I exposed them. The words tasted like ash. I had evidence, documentation, recorded conversations. I thought Marcus would understand. That he'd want to do the right thing. She laughed bitterly. Instead, he asked me to bury it. Said his father had made mistakes, but bringing it public would destroy innocent people. His mother, his sister, workers who depended on the foundation. But you published anyway. I published anyway. Mira blinked hard against the burning in her eyes. The foundation collapsed. Marcus's father went to prison. His mother had a nervous breakdown. And Marcus, he looked at me like I was a monster. Like I'd chosen strangers over the man I loved. You chose justice, Kyle said quietly. I chose loneliness. The admission came out raw. Everyone I knew took their side. Said I was vindictive, heartless. That I'd destroyed a family over money that would have been replaced eventually anyway. She swallowed hard. Sometimes I wonder if they were right. If exposing the truth was worth losing everything. It was. The certainty in Kale's voice made her glance over. He was watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. You protected children, he continued. Kids who had already been abandoned by the system, who had no one to fight for them. You gave them justice even when it cost you everything. He paused. That's not heartless, Mira. That's the opposite. Something in Mira's chest cracked open. For 6 months, she'd carried the weight of her choice alone, second-guessing every decision, wondering if she'd been wrong. Hearing Kale, validate her sacrifice made tears prick at her eyes. Thank you, she whispered. For what? For understanding. Kale reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand covered hers on the steering wheel. Warm, rough, solid. The touch sent electricity racing up her arm. We're the same, you and I, he said softly. Both punished for refusing to be what others demanded. Both exiled for choosing principle over belonging. Mira turned her hand over, lacing their fingers together. It felt natural, right? like something she'd done 1,000 times before, even though they'd just met. "That pull," she said. "The thing you won't explain. Is it always this strong?" Kyle's hand tensed in hers. "No, it's never this strong. That's what scares me." "Why?" He pulled his hand back, looking away. "Because there's only one thing in our world that creates a bond this instant, this undeniable." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "And it shouldn't be possible between a human and a shifter." Mira's heart was pounding. "What is it?" Before Cale could answer, something massive slammed into the side of the truck. The vehicle lurched sideways, tires screaming. Mira fought the wheel as they skidded toward the edge of the road, and the 100-foot drop beyond it. In her peripheral vision, she caught a flash of gray fur, yellow eyes, teeth. The hunters had caught up, and they were done playing games. Chapter 5. The Choice Between Worlds. "Hold on!" Mira yanked the wheel hard right, steering into the skid. The truck's back end fishtailed, spraying snow and gravel, but she managed to pull them back from the edge. Her journalist instincts kicked in, the same cold clarity that had gotten her through war zones and cartel interviews. Another impact, this time from behind. The truck lurched forward. "They're trying to push us off the mountain," Cale growled, twisting to look through the rear window. "3 of them. The black one I injured is missing. Where?" The black wolf materialized on the road ahead, blocking their path. Even wounded, it was massive, its scarred muzzle pulled back in a snarl. Blood matted its shoulder where Mira's bullet had struck. "Ram it," Cale said. "What?" "It's injured, weakened. It'll move. Ram it." Mira hesitated for only a heartbeat, then floored the accelerator. The truck surged forward. The black wolf held its ground, yellow eyes locked on them, daring them to follow through. At the last second, it leaped aside, but not fast enough. The truck's side mirror caught the wolf's hindquarters, sending it spinning into a snowbank with a yelp of pain. Mira didn't slow down. "Good," Kyle said, his voice tight. "But they'll regroup. How far to the mines?" 20 miles, maybe less." Mira's eyes darted to the gas gauge. 3/4 full. They could make it. They had to. A gray wolf appeared alongside them, running impossibly fast, keeping pace with the truck even as Mira pushed the speedometer past 60 on the narrow mountain road. It turned its head, meeting her eyes through the window, and Mira saw intelligence there. Cold, calculating intelligence. Then it swerved directly into their path. Mira jerked the wheel. The truck veered left, tires losing purchase on the icy road. They spun once, twice, the world becoming a blur of white and green. Cale's hand shot out, bracing against the dashboard, his other arm wrapping around Mira's shoulders, pulling her close as if he could shield her from the impact. The truck slammed sideways into a tree. The crash was deafening, metal shrieking, glass shattering, airbags deploying with explosive force. Mira's head snapped forward, then back, stars bursting across her vision. Pain lanced through her shoulder, her ribs. For a moment, everything was silent except for the ringing in her ears. "Mira." Cale's voice cut through the fog. His hands were on her face, turning her toward him. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead. "Mira, look at me. Are you hurt?" She tried to move, gasped at the sharp pain in her side. "Ribs. Maybe broken. We need to move, now." Kyle was already kicking his door open, the hinges screaming in protest. He came around to her side, yanking her door wide. "Can you walk?" Mira nodded, though every movement sent waves of agony through her torso. Kyle's arm slid around her waist, taking most of her weight as he pulled her from the wreckage. The 3 wolves stood in a semicircle around them, blocking any escape. In the distance, Mira could see the black wolf limping toward them, determination in every painful step. "Run," Kyle said quietly. "I can't." "Yes, you can." He pressed something into her hand. Her rifle, retrieved from the truck. "There's a cave system, 200 yards northeast. I can smell it from here. You run, and you don't look back." Mira's blood turned to ice. "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done from the beginning." Kale's golden eyes met hers, and she saw his decision written there. Final. Absolute. "I'm going to make sure you survive this." "No." Mira's grip tightened on his arm. "We go together, remember? This is my world, Mira. My consequences." His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away blood. Hers or his, she couldn't tell. "You've already given me more than I deserved. A chance to be something other than a hunted animal. Someone actually saw me and didn't turn away. Kale, when I shift, they'll focus on me. You'll have maybe 10 seconds. Use them." His voice softened. "And Mira? What I couldn't tell you in the truck. That bond we both feel. In my world, it's called a soul tie. It means our spirits recognized each other. That across all the chaos and pain, fate decided we were meant to find each other." Tears burned Mira's eyes. "Then you can't just... It means I'll do anything to protect you." Kale's lips brushed her forehead, gentle, reverent. "Goodbye." "Even this." He stepped away before she could stop him, and his body began to change. But something was wrong. The transformation that should have been fluid and quick came in spasms. Kyle cried out, a sound of pure agony, as his body fought the shift. His wounds, Mira realized with horror, they were too severe. The transformation was tearing him apart. The gray wolf lunged. Mira didn't think. She raised the rifle and fired. The shot caught the wolf mid-leap, spinning it sideways. It hit the ground hard, scrambling to regain its footing. "I'm not running," Mira said, her voice deadly calm as she chambered another round. "You can barely shift, you can barely walk, and you think I'm going to leave you?" She positioned herself beside him, rifle ready. "We survived together, Kale. That's the deal." His half-shifted form turned toward her. More wolf than man, but not quite either. And in those golden eyes she saw disbelief, desperation, and something that looked dangerously close to love. The wolves began to circle, more cautious, now. They'd underestimated the human. That mistake had cost them. The cave. Kyle managed through a transformed jaw. Together? Together? They moved as one, Mira supporting Kyle's weight while keeping the rifle trained on the nearest wolf, Kale using what remained of his human hands to pull them forward. Each step was agony for both of them, but they didn't stop. The wolves paced alongside, waiting for a moment of weakness. 50 yards, 40. Mira fired again, forcing one wolf back. 2 rounds left, 30 yards. She could see the cave entrance now, a dark slash in the mountainside. 20 yards. The black wolf appeared ahead of them, blocking their path. Despite its injuries, despite the blood loss, it had circled around. The other wolves moved in from behind. They were trapped. "Mira," Kyle rasped. "Trust me." "What?" He pushed away from her support and lunged forward with a snarl that shook the air itself. It wasn't the sound of an omega. It was the sound of something primal, something ancient. The black wolf actually stepped back, confusion flickering in its yellow eyes. Kale's body blazed with silver light. The transformation that had been agonizing before suddenly became something else entirely. Power radiated from him in waves, and when the shift completed, the wolf standing before them was different. Larger. His silver-black fur seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. The black wolf lowered its head. not in aggression, but submission. What? Mira breathed. But Kyle didn't pause. He grabbed her jacket in his massive jaws, surprisingly gentle, and dragged her toward the cave. The other wolves parted, letting them pass, confusion and fear evident in their body language. They tumbled into the darkness of the cave, and Kyle's body immediately collapsed, the silver light dying. He shifted back to human form, naked and shaking, blood streaming from reopened wounds. What was that? Mira crawled to him, pressing her hands against the worst of the bleeding. That power, the way they submitted. Not Omega, Kyle gasped. His golden eyes found hers in the dim light. Never was. Then what are you? His hand found hers, grip weak but determined. My mother kept secrets, protected me from more than I knew. Each word was a struggle. The silver light, it's alpha blood. True alpha blood. Mira's mind reeled. But you said, I believed what they told me, that I was weak, broken. His laugh was bitter. But Omegas can't command other wolves, can't make alphas submit. His eyes began to close. I'm not an Omega born to alpha bloodline. I'm an alpha they tried to suppress, to break. Kale, stay with me. The soul tie, he whispered. Now you know why. It's so strong. True alphas only bond with true mates. His hand squeezed hers. Fate chose you, Mira. And I choose you too. His eyes closed, his body going limp. Kale. Mira's hands moved frantically, trying to stop the bleeding, but there was so much blood. No, 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 stay with me. Behind her, she heard movement at the cave entrance. She spun, raising the rifle with shaking hands. A man stood there, tall, dark-haired, with eyes that matched Kyle's. But where Kale's expression had been gentle, this man's was carved from ice and authority. So, Darius Thornridge said, looking at his brother's broken body with something like regret. The prodigal son finally remembers what he is. His gaze shifted to Mira, and she saw her death in those cold golden eyes. And you're the complication I've been warned about. Chapter 6. The Alpha King's Truth. Mira kept the rifle trained on Darius, though her hands trembled with exhaustion and pain. Behind her, Kale's breathing was shallow, irregular. She could feel his blood soaking through her jeans where she knelt beside him. Stay back, she warned, her voice steadier than she felt. Darius tilted his head, studying her with the same predatory intensity. Kale had shone, but where Kale's gaze had held warmth, Darius's was calculating, cold. He was handsome in a harsh way, his features sharper than his brother's, his body radiating power even in stillness. You shot 2 of my hunters, he said conversationally, as if discussing the weather. Wounded a 3rd, and you've somehow convinced my brother to unleash power he's spent 2 decades suppressing. His lips curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. I underestimated you. I won't make that mistake again. Good. Then you'll understand why I'll pull this trigger if you take another step. You have 2 bullets left. Darius's eyes glowed briefly, a flash of gold that made the air shimmer. I have 20 wolves surrounding this mountain. You do the math. Mira's stomach dropped, but she didn't lower the weapon. Then we're at an impasse, because you need something from me, or you would have already killed us both. Darius's expression shifted. Surprise, then something like respect. You're smarter than I expected. Most humans freeze when confronted with our world. They break. I'm not most humans. No, Darius agreed, moving closer with careful, measured steps. You're not. You're a soul tie. A true mate bond with a true alpha. He crouched several feet away, making himself less threatening. Do you know how rare that is? How precious? Mira's grip tightened on the rifle. If it's so precious, Why are you hunting us? Because it shouldn't exist. The words came out harsh, painful. Human and shifter bonds are forbidden, have been for 3 centuries since the Treaty of Blood was signed. The last human who bonded with an alpha nearly destroyed both our worlds. I don't care about your treaty. You should. Darius's eyes locked on hers. The bond you share with Kale, it's already begun. You feel it, don't you? The pull, the need to be near him, the way your heart races when he's in danger. Mira said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. It will get stronger, Darius continued. Within weeks, you won't be able to function apart. The bond will consume you both. His wolf will go feral trying to protect you, and you'll lose yourself to the connection. You'll stop being Mira Castellan and become nothing but his mate. You're lying. I'm not. There was no triumph in his voice, only tired certainty. I've seen it happen. The bond is beautiful, but it's also a curse for humans. Your mind can't handle the intensity of a shifter connection. You'll burn out, and when you do, Kale will follow you into madness. Mira's chest tightened. She thought of the pull she'd felt from the first moment their eyes met. The way touching Kale felt like coming home. Was that real? Or just the beginning of something that would destroy them both? Then why not just kill me? She asked. Wouldn't that be simpler? Because killing you would kill him. Darius's expression twisted with something that might have been grief. The bond, once formed, is eternal. If you die, his soul goes with you. And despite everything, his voice caught. He's still my brother. The admission hung in the air between them. Mira saw past the Alpha King's mask for just a moment. Saw the boy who'd once loved his younger brother, who'd made impossible choices, who carried the weight of those choices like a physical burden. You didn't want to do this, Mira said quietly, suppressing his alpha nature, making him believe he was Omega. You were protecting him. Darius's jaw clenched. Our father was a tyrant. He saw Kale's power before anyone else. Saw that Kale had the potential to surpass him, to challenge his authority. So he broke him. Used ancient magic to suppress his alpha nature, to convince everyone, including Kale, that he was worthless. And you let it happen. I was 15 years old. The words came out like a roar, raw with old pain. What was I supposed to do? Challenge our father and die alongside Kale? Leave the pack to his? Cruelty with no one to eventually take his place? Darius's hands clenched into fists. I made a choice. I let Kale suffer so I could survive, so I could eventually become Alpha and end our father's reign. But you never told him the truth. How could I? Darius's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. By the time I became Alpha, Kale had internalized the lies. Believed he was weak, broken, worthless. If I'd told him the truth, that I'd stood by and watched our father destroy him, he would have either challenged me and died, or worse, he would have forgiven me. And I don't deserve forgiveness. Mira stared at the Alpha King, seeing him clearly for the first time. He wasn't a monster. He was just another wounded soul trying to survive impossible circumstances. So you exiled him instead, she said. Kept him at the edges, close enough to protect from a distance but far enough to maintain the lie. Yes. Darius's golden eyes glistened. But the power couldn't be suppressed. Forever. I knew that. Our father knew that. So the treaty became my excuse. If Kale ever bonded with someone, I could claim I was upholding ancient law instead of admitting the truth. That I'm a coward who sacrificed his brother for a crown. Behind Mira, Kale stirred. A weak groan escaped his lips. Darius, he rasped, his voice barely audible. The Alpha King's face transformed. Hope, fear, and love warring for dominance. He moved forward before Mira could stop him, dropping to his knees beside his brother. "I'm here," Darius said, his hand hovering over Kale's chest as if afraid to touch him. "I'm here, little brother." Kale's eyes opened, unfocused and pain-glazed. You came." "Of course I came. You unleashed your true power. I felt it across the mountains. Every alpha in 100 miles felt it." Darius's voice cracked. "Gods, Kale. You're magnificent, just like I always knew you'd be." "You knew?" Kale tried to sit up, failed. Mira was there immediately, supporting him, and she saw Darius's eyes track the movement, saw him note the unconscious intimacy between them. "I've always known," Darius admitted, "but I was too weak to tell you. Too afraid of losing you completely if you learned what I'd let happen." Kale's hand found Mira's, held it like a lifeline. "The bond is going to kill you both," Darius finished. "Unless we break it." "No." The word came from both Kale and Mira simultaneously. Darius looked between them, saw their intertwined hands, the way they leaned toward each other even now. "You don't understand what you're choosing. The bond will—" "I don't care." Mira met his gaze steadily. "I've spent my whole life making the safe choice, the practical choice. It got me nowhere but alone in a cabin, hiding from the world. Kyle makes me feel alive again. Makes me remember who I used to be before I let fear win. And when the bond consumes you, when you lose yourself, then we'll face that together." Kale's voice was stronger now, his golden eyes clear. "I'm done running, Darius. Done hiding what I am. Done letting fear make my choices." He looked at Mira, and the love in his gaze made her chest ache. She saw me at my lowest, broken, bleeding, dying, and she still chose to save me. No one has ever done that. Not our pack, not our father. His voice softened. "Not even you." Darius flinched as if struck. "Kale, I don't blame you," Kale continued. "You were a child, same as me. You survived the only way you could. But I'm not a child anymore, and neither are you. So make a choice, brother. Be the Alpha King who upholds cruel laws, or be the Alpha who changes them." The silence stretched taut between them. Mira could see Darius wrestling with himself. Duty versus love, law versus justice. Finally, the Alpha King spoke. "The other Alphas will challenge this. They'll see a human-shifter bond as a threat to our way of life. Let them come." Kyle said simply, "You're still injured. You've barely touched your true power. You're not ready to face the Alpha Council." "Then I'll get ready." Kyle squeezed Mira's hand, "and I won't be alone." Darius's gaze moved to Mira, assessment in his eyes. "You understand what this means? If you stay with him, you'll become part of our world, our politics, our wars, our dangers. There's no going back to your human life." Mira thought of her empty cabin, her exile, her loneliness. Then she thought of Kale's hand in hers, the way he looked at her like she mattered, like she was worth protecting, worth fighting for. "I don't want to go back," she said. "I want to go forward." Something shifted in Darius's expression, the ice cracking, revealing the brother beneath the king. "Then we have work to do," he said. "The full moon rises in 3 days. If we're going to convince the Alpha Council to overturn the treaty, we need to prepare. And Kale," his voice softened, "you need to learn to control your true nature before then. Or we all die." Kyle managed a weak smile. "No pressure then." Despite everything, Darius smiled back, a real smile, warm and genuine. "Welcome back, little brother. I've missed you." "I've missed you too." As the two brothers embraced, carefully, mindful of Kale's injuries, Mira felt the weight of what they'd chosen settle over her. 3 days to prepare for a confrontation that could change everything. 3 days to learn a world she'd never known existed. 3 days to decide if love was worth dying for. Looking at Kyle, feeling the pull of the soul tie thrumming through her veins, Mira already knew her answer. Chapter 7. Learning to Breathe. The Thornridge Fortress was carved into the mountain itself. Ancient stone halls lit by torches, tapestries depicting centuries of pack history, and everywhere the scent of pine and snow and something wild that made Mira's skin prickle with awareness. Kale's room, their room now, she supposed, occupied the eastern tower. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the forest, and a massive bed dominated the space. Mira tried not to think too hard about the sleeping arrangements as she helped Kale ease onto the mattress. "I can manage," he protested, though his face was gray with pain. "Sure you can." Mira began unwrapping his makeshift bandages, revealing the wounds beneath. They looked better than they had in the cave, but not by much. "And I can fly. Want to see?" Despite everything, Kale laughed, then winced. "Don't make me laugh. It hurts." "Then stop being stubborn." Mira's hands moved with practiced efficiency, cleaning the wounds with supplies Darius had provided. "You nearly died twice in 24 hours. You're allowed to accept help." "I'm not used to it." The quiet admission made Mira pause. She looked up, met his golden eyes. "Get used to it, because I'm not going anywhere." Something tender crossed Kale's face. His hand lifted, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The simple touch sent electricity racing down her spine. "The bond," he said, softly. "You feel it getting stronger, don't you?" Mira nodded, not trusting her voice. It was true. Every hour that passed, the pull intensified. When she'd left the room earlier to get water, she'd made it halfway down the hall before panic seized her. An overwhelming need to get back to Kale, to make sure he was safe, breathing, alive. "Darius said it would consume us," she whispered. "That I'd lose myself." "And do you feel like you're losing yourself?" Kale's thumb traced her cheekbone. "Or do you feel like you're finally becoming who you were meant to be?" Mira thought about it. The truth was, she didn't feel diminished by the bond. She felt more aware, more alive, more connected to something greater than herself. It was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. "Both," she admitted. "It scares me how much I need you. How much I—" She stopped, the words catching in her throat. "How much you what?" Mira looked away, but Kale's hand gently guided her face back to his. "Tell me," he urged. "Please." "How much I'm starting to love you," she breathed. "We barely know each other. This is crazy. But I feel like I've been waiting my whole life to find you, and now that I have, the thought of anything taking you away makes me want to burn the world down." Kale's eyes blazed gold. "Mira, I know it's the bond," she continued quickly. "I know it's not real. It's the most real thing I've ever felt." Kale sat up despite his injuries, cupping her face in both hands. "Yes, the bond amplifies what we feel. But it doesn't create something from nothing. It recognizes what was already there. What would have always been there if we'd met under any circumstances." His forehead touched hers. "I fell for you the moment you knelt beside me in the snow, when you looked at a dying wolf and saw something worth saving." "Kale," Mira whispered, tears burning her eyes. "I love you," he said simply. "Bond or no bond, soul tie or no soul tie. I love the woman who chose truth over comfort, who risked her life for a stranger, who stands between me and death with a rifle and 2 bullets and refuses to back down." Mira's breath caught. Then she closed the distance between them, pressing her lips to his. The kiss was gentle at first, tentative, exploring. But the moment their lips met, the soul tie flared to life like a living thing. Heat rushed through Mira's veins, and she felt Kale everywhere. His emotions, his pain, his overwhelming love and need and fierce protectiveness. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it felt like coming home. Kyle groaned against her mouth, his hands sliding into her hair, pulling her closer. The kiss deepened, turned desperate. Years of loneliness and longing poured into this single moment of connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mira rested her forehead against his. That was everything, Kyle finished. That was everything. A knock at the door shattered the moment. Darius entered without waiting for permission, his expression carefully neutral as he took in their proximity. "Sorry to interrupt," he said, though his tone suggested he wasn't sorry at all. "But we have work to do. Kyle, you need to start training. And Mira," he turned to her, "you need to learn about our world. The council won't just be judging Kale, they'll be judging you too." Mira straightened. "What do I need to know?" "Everything." Darius gestured for her to follow. "And we have less than 3 days to teach you." The next 2 days passed in a blur of information and intensity. Mira learned about pack hierarchy, how alphas led through dominance, betas provided structure, and omegas, despite what Kale had been told, were actually essential for pack cohesion. She learned about the moon's influence on shifter abilities, about ancient bloodlines and territorial disputes, about the Treaty of Blood that had been signed 3 centuries ago. A true alpha named Marcus fell in love with a human woman named Elena. Darius explained as they sat in his study, maps and ancient texts spread between them. Their bond was powerful, too powerful. Marcus became obsessed with protecting her, abandoning his pack duties. When Elena was killed by rival shifters, Marcus went on a rampage. He slaughtered hundreds before the combined Alpha Council could stop him. "So they banned all human shifter bonds," Mira said quietly. "They banned them and decreed that any Alpha who formed such a bond would be executed, along with their human mate." Darius's expression was grim. The law was meant to prevent another Marcus, but it's become a tool of control, a way to keep alphas focused on pack politics instead of personal attachments. That's not justice. That's fear. "Welcome to our world." Darius closed the ancient tome before him. "The council will use Marcus and Elena as their argument against you. You need to be ready to counter it." "How?" "By proving you're nothing like Elena. That you make Kale stronger, not weaker. That your bond serves the pack, not just yourselves." He met her eyes. "Can you do that?" Mira thought of Kale, of the way he smiled when she entered a room, the way he fought harder when she was watching. "Yes, I can do that." Meanwhile, in the training grounds below, Kyle was learning to harness his true nature. Mira watched from the window as he shifted from human to wolf and back again, each transformation smoother than the last. His wolf form was magnificent, larger than any other shifter, his silver-black fur gleaming in the afternoon sun, power radiating from him in waves. But more than his physical strength, she saw his confidence returning. The hunted, wounded creature she'd saved was transforming into something else. A leader, a protector, an alpha worthy of his bloodline. On the second evening, Mira found him alone in the courtyard, practicing combat forms in human shape. Sweat gleamed on his bare torso, highlighting every scar, every hard-earned muscle. "You're staring," he said without turning around. "Can you blame me?" Kale turned, a smile playing at his lips. "Come here." Mira approached, and he pulled her into his arms, both of them ignoring the impropriety. The bond hummed between them, content and warm. "Tomorrow," Kyle said quietly. "Tomorrow, the council arrives." "Are you ready?" "I don't know." His hand traced patterns on her back. "But I know I'm not facing them alone. That makes all the difference." They stood there as the sun set, two souls bound together by fate and choice, preparing for a battle that would determine their future. Neither of them noticed the figure watching from the shadows, a woman with silver hair and ancient eyes, who smiled at what she saw. "So the prophecy begins," she whispered to the darkness. "The true alpha and the catalyst. Let's see if they survive what's coming." She vanished like smoke, leaving only the scent of wild roses and old magic behind. In the courtyard, Mira shivered despite Kale's warmth. "What is it?" he asked. "Nothing," she lied, pulling him closer. "Just a chill." But deep in her bones, she felt it, the sense that their greatest challenge wasn't the council at all. It was something far older, far more dangerous. And it was coming for them both. Chapter 8. The Council's Judgment. The great hall was built to intimidate. 12 stone thrones circled the chamber, each carved with the sigil of an ancient pack. Torches cast flickering shadows across walls hung with the pelts of legendary wolves. The ceiling soared 3 stories high, open to the full moon that hung like a silver eye overhead. Mira stood beside Kale in the center of the circle, acutely aware of the 12 pairs of eyes watching them. 11 alphas from across the territories, and Darius, who sat rigid on his throne, his expression carefully neutral. The alphas were terrifying in their diversity. Some appeared young, barely older than Mira, while others looked ancient, despite their ageless faces. Men and women both, each radiating power that made the air thick and hard to breathe. But it was the woman on the highest throne who commanded attention. She had silver hair that fell to her waist, pale skin that seemed to glow in the moonlight, and eyes that shifted color. Gold one moment, green the next, violet after that. She wore robes of midnight blue embroidered with silver thread, and when she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries. "Kale Thornridge," she said, and the name echoed through the chamber. "You stand accused of violating the Treaty of Blood by forming a soul tie with a human. How do you plead?" Kale's hand found Mira's, squeezed once. Then he stepped forward, his voice clear and unwavering. "I plead guilty to loving her, but I refuse to accept that love is a crime." Murmurs rippled through the council. The silver-haired woman, the high alpha, Mira realized, raised one hand, and silence fell instantly. "The treaty exists for a reason," she said. "Marcus Bloodmoon's obsession with his human mate nearly destroyed both our worlds. Hundreds died. The balance between human and shifter nearly collapsed. We cannot allow history to repeat itself." "With respect, High Alpha Selene," Kale said, and Mira heard steel in his voice. Marcus Bloodmoon's tragedy wasn't caused by love. It was caused by isolation. He hid his bond, acted alone, and when Elena was killed, he had no pact to ground him, no support to keep him sane. He became a monster because the treaty forced him to be one. "A convenient argument," another alpha spoke up. A massive man with a scarred face and cold gray eyes. "But the risk remains. Human minds cannot withstand the intensity of a true mate bond. She will break, and when she does, you will become what Marcus became." "I'm standing right here," Mira said sharply. All eyes turned to her. "And I'd appreciate it if you'd stop talking about me like I'm a fragile object waiting to shatter." The scarred alpha's eyes narrowed. "You dare speak without permission?" "I dare to defend myself when accused." Mira met his gaze without flinching. "You claim I'll break under the bond's intensity. But I've spent 2 days connected to Kale's emotions, his pain, his power. I feel the pull every second, and I'm still here, Still myself. Still choosing this. 2 days, the Alpha scoffed. The bond has barely begun. Give it weeks, months. You'll lose yourself. Elena didn't, Mira countered. From what I've read in your histories, she remained herself until the day she died. It was losing her that destroyed Marcus, not the bond itself. High Alpha Selene leaned forward, interest sparking in her shifting eyes. You've studied our histories? Every text I could find. Every account of Marcus and Elena's bond. Mira took a breath, steadying herself. And what I found was that Elena made Marcus better. More compassionate, more willing to seek peaceful solutions. The other alphas feared her. Influence feared that she was making him weak, so they orchestrated her death. The chamber erupted in outrage. Several alphas surged to their feet, voices raised in denial and fury. Silence. Selene's command cracked like thunder. Everyone froze. The girl speaks truth that we've long buried. Elena's death was not a random attack. It was a political assassination meant to eliminate Marcus's growing power. Then you admit the treaty is built on murder, Kale said quietly. On the council's fear of alphas who might challenge the status quo. Selene's expression was unreadable. The treaty is built on survival. But yes, it is also built on fear. The question becomes, are you strong enough to prove that fear unjustified? We are, Mira said firmly. Words are easy, human. The scarred alpha, she'd learned his name was Ragnar, circled them like a predator. But we require proof. If you claim the bond makes you strong rather than weak, prove it. What do you suggest? Kale asked, his voice dangerously soft. A trial by combat, Ragnar said, and Mira's blood ran cold. You against me. If the bond truly strengthens you, you should have no trouble defeating an Alpha King in single combat. He's barely recovered from his injuries, Darius protested, rising from his throne. This is murder disguised as justice. Then perhaps he should have thought of that before breaking our most sacred law. Ragnar's smile was cruel. Unless he admits the bond is a weakness and agrees to sever it. Mira felt Kale's rage through their connection, hot and violent and barely controlled. She squeezed his hand, sending calm through the bond, and was amazed when it actually worked. She felt his fury bank, become focused instead of wild. I'll fight, Kale said, but not alone. Ragnar laughed. You want to hide behind your human? I want to show you what a true soul tie can do. Kale looked at High Alpha Selene. Marcus fought alone because he had to. Because the treaty forced him to hide his bond, to treat Elena as a weakness rather than a strength. Let me fight with Mira. Let us prove that together we're stronger than any wolf fighting alone. The council erupted in debate. Such a thing had never been done. A human fighting alongside a shifter in the sacred circle. It violated tradition, protocol, centuries of precedent. But Mira saw calculation in Selene's shifting eyes. The High Alpha was considering it. This is madness, Ragnar growled. Humans have no place in shifter combat. Perhaps that's exactly why they should, Selene mused. You claim the bond is a weakness, Ragnar. Here's your chance to prove it. You against both of them. If you win, the treaty stands, and they die. If they win... She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. The treaty is abolished. Human shifter bonds will be permitted throughout all territories. The stakes couldn't be higher. Mira felt Kale's shock through the bond, his fear for her safety. Mira, he whispered. You don't have to... Yes, I do. She turned to face him fully, ignoring the watching council. You said I make you stronger. Prove it. Trust me. Their eyes locked, gold meeting brown, and through the bond, Mira felt his love, his terror, his desperate hope. Together? He asked. Always. Kyle turned back to the council. We accept. Ragnar's grin was feral. Then let's see what your precious bond is worth. The council began to rise, moving toward the arena below. But High Alpha Selene remained seated, her strange eyes fixed on Mira with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Do you know what you are, child? Selena asked softly, her voice somehow carrying despite the noise. Do you know why the bond chose you? Mira frowned. You're no ordinary human. Selene descended from her throne, moving with fluid grace. I can smell magic on you. Old magic. Dormant but waking. She circled Mira, studying her. Your bloodline carries power you've never accessed. Power that recognizes Kale's alpha nature and amplifies it. What are you saying? I'm saying you're a catalyst. Selene's words sent ice through Mira's veins. A human born with latent magical ability, meant to bond with true alphas and magnify their strength. You're rarer than soul ties, rarer than true alphas themselves. And if Ragnar knows what you are, she glanced toward where the scarred alpha was preparing for battle. He won't just kill you. He'll try to break you, to prove that even catalysts can't survive what's coming. What's coming? Kale demanded. Selene met his eyes. Something that makes your fight with Ragnar look like a children's game. Something I've been tracking for decades. Her gaze shifted back to Mira. The prophecy spoke of a true alpha and a catalyst, bound together when the old darkness rises. I thought I'd have more time to prepare you. But fate has its own timeline. You're the woman from the courtyard, Mira breathed. You've been watching us, protecting you, when I could. Selene's expression softened. The council doesn't know what you are yet. Most of them lack the sight to recognize a catalyst. But after tonight's trial, they will. And some will want to use you. Others will want you dead. Let them try, Kale growled, moving protectively closer to Mira. Selene smiled, sad and knowing. That's exactly what Marcus said about Elena, and we all know how that ended. Before either could respond, Ragnar's voice boomed through the hall. Enough delay. Face me in the arena, or forfeit your lives now. Mira looked at Kale, then at Selene, then at the arena where their fate would be decided. No more running, she said quietly. No more hiding. Whatever I am, whatever we're meant to face, we do it together. Kyle took her hand, brought it to his lips. Together. They descended into the arena as the full moon reached its apex, its silver light pouring down like judgment from the heavens. In the shadows, something ancient stirred. The prophecy was unfolding, and blood would be shed before dawn. Chapter 9. Trial by Moonlight. The arena floor was hard-packed earth, stained dark from centuries of blood. Stone walls rose 30 feet on all sides, topped with the watching council members. Torches burned in iron sconces, casting dancing shadows that made the space feel alive, predatory. Mira's heart hammered against her ribs as she and Kale took their position on one side of the circle. Across from them, Ragnar was already shifting, bones cracking, muscles expanding, fur rippling across his skin. His wolf form was enormous, easily matching Kale's size, with gray fur shot through with silver and scars that told stories of countless battles won. Stay behind me, Kale said, beginning his own transformation. No. Mira's hand on his arm stopped him. You said we fight together. That means side by side, not me hiding behind you. Mira, you're human. One swipe from his claws will hurt a lot less if you trust me. She looked into his golden eyes, letting him feel her determination through the bond. I don't know what being a catalyst means yet, but I know this. I'm not useless. I'm not weak. And I'm not going to let you face this alone. Kyle stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. Side by side. side by side. He shifted, his transformation smoother now, more controlled. Within seconds, the massive silver-black wolf stood beside her, his head level with her shoulder. Through the bond, she felt his thoughts, clearer in wolf form than she'd expected. Trust me. Feel me. We move as one. Mira had no time to wonder how she could understand him. Ragnar was charging. The gray wolf moved with terrifying speed, closing the distance in seconds. Mira dove left while Kale went right, forcing Ragnar to choose a target. He chose Kale, slamming into him with enough force to shake the ground. The two wolves collided in a tangle of teeth and claws. Mira scrambled to her feet, her mind racing. She had no weapons, no way to harm a creature that size. But Celine had said she was a catalyst, that she could amplify Kale's power. How? She felt Kale's pain through the bond as Ragnar's teeth found his shoulder. Without thinking, Mira reached for that connection, pulling it taut like a rope, and sent everything she had through it. Her strength, her will, her absolute conviction that they would survive this. The effect was immediate. Silver light exploded from Kale's fur, so bright it lit the arena like daylight. Ragnar yelped and stumbled back, temporarily blinded. Kale wrenched free, his movements suddenly faster, stronger. He struck back with devastating force, his claws leaving deep gashes across Ragnar's ribs. Again, Kale's voice echoed in her mind. Do it again. Mira didn't know how she'd done it the first time, but she tried, reaching for that well of power inside her that she'd never known existed. It felt like diving into cold water, shocking and disorienting. But beneath the surface, she found something that thrummed with energy, ancient and vast. She pulled, and the power came willingly. This time, the silver light surrounded them both. Mira gasped as strength flooded her limbs, not shifter strength, but something else. Enhanced speed, heightened awareness, her senses suddenly sharp enough to track Ragnar's movements in the flickering torchlight. She moved without conscious thought, diving beneath Ragnar's next attack, her hands finding a fallen torch. The wood was heavy, but with the catalyst power flowing through her, she swung it like a sword, catching the gray wolf across his hindquarters. Flame met fur. Ragnar howled in pain and rage, spinning to face this unexpected threat. Mira, no! Kale's mental voice was panicked. Get back! But Mira was beyond fear now. The power sang in her veins, showed her patterns in Ragnar's movements, weak points in his defense. She saw the slight hesitation in his injured leg, the way he favored his left side where Kale's claws had struck deepest. She saw, and she acted. Kale, left flank, low! She didn't speak aloud, but somehow he heard her through the bond. They moved in perfect synchronization, Mira feinting right with the torch, drawing Ragnar's attention, while Kale struck from the left. His teeth found the back of Ragnar's neck, the killing spot for any wolf. But Kale didn't kill. He held, applying just enough pressure to force submission. Ragnar struggled, snarled, but Kale's grip was unbreakable, and with Mira's power flowing through him, feeding him strength, he was unstoppable. Yield, Mira said quietly, stepping closer despite the danger. This doesn't have to end in death. Ragnar's yellow eyes locked on hers, full of hate and grudging respect. Then slowly, his body went limp, the universal sign of surrender. Kale released him immediately, stepping back. The silver light faded, and Mira felt the catalyst power retreat, leaving her shaking and exhausted but still standing. The arena was silent. Then High Alpha Selene's voice rang out, clear and commanding. The trial is complete. Kale Thornridge and Mira Castellan have proven their bond strengthens rather than weakens. The Treaty of Blood is hereby abolished. The pronouncement sent shockwaves through the council. Some alphas cheered. Others looked furious. But none could deny what they'd witnessed. A true alpha and a catalyst fighting as one, achieving what should have been impossible. Ragnar shifted back to human form, naked and bleeding but alive. He looked at Mira with something that might have been wonder. "I've fought for 3 centuries," he said hoarsely. "Killed hundreds, and a human with a torch just bested me." He laughed, a harsh, disbelieving sound. Perhaps the old ways need to die. He limped away, leaving blood in his wake. The other alphas began to descend into the arena, some to congratulate them, others to argue with Celine's ruling. But Mira only had eyes for Kale, who was shifting back to human form, his body marked with new wounds, but his golden eyes bright with pride and love. "You were magnificent," he said, pulling her into his arms despite his injuries. "How did you—" "I don't know." Mira clung to him, her whole body trembling with reaction. "I just felt your need, and something inside me answered." "The catalyst bond," Celine said, appearing beside them with a healer in tow. "Deeper than a soul tie, more powerful. You two are connected on a level that transcends ordinary shifter magic." She gestured to the healer. "Get them both treated. Then we need to talk about what comes next." "What comes next is rest," Darius said, joining them. Pride shone in his eyes as he looked at his brother. "You did it, Kyle. You changed our world." "We did it," Kale corrected, his arm tightening around Mira. "I couldn't have—" His words cut off abruptly. His body went rigid, his eyes widening in alarm. "Kale?" Mira felt his panic through, the bond, sharp and cold. "What's wrong?" "Something's here," he whispered. "Something old and hungry and—" The torches went out. Every single flame extinguished simultaneously, plunging the arena into darkness broken only by moonlight. The temperature dropped so fast that Mira could see her breath, and a smell filled the air. Decay and old earth and something fundamentally wrong. Celine's voice cut through the darkness. "Everyone out! Now!" But it was too late. Shadows boiled up from the arena floor. Not natural shadows, but living darkness that moved with intelligence and malice. They took shape as they rose. Twisted forms that were almost human, almost wolf, but neither and both at once. "Shadow beasts," Celine breathed, and for the first time Mira heard fear in her voice. "They're not supposed to exist anymore. We destroyed them all." "Clearly you missed some," Darius snarled, already shifting. The shadow beasts attacked. Chaos erupted. Alphas shifted and fought, their howls mixing with inhuman shrieks, but claws and teeth passed through the shadows like smoke, doing no damage. One of the creatures lunged at Mira. Kyle threw himself between them, but his attack was equally useless. His claws found nothing solid to rend. Then Mira felt it, the catalyst power stirring again, responding to the threat. But this time it felt different. Not silverlight, but something darker, older, pulling from a deeper well inside her. She thrust her hand toward the shadow beast, acting on instinct alone. White gold flame erupted from her palm. The shadow beast shrieked and recoiled, its form dissolving where the flame touched. Around the arena, the other creatures turned toward her as one, recognizing a true threat. "Mira, what?" Kale stared at her in shock. "I don't know," she gasped, staring at her burning hands. The flames didn't hurt her, but they consumed the shadows like they were paper. "I don't—" Finally, a voice whispered through the darkness. Ancient, amused, terrifying. The catalyst awakens. How convenient. The shadows retreated, flowing back into the earth as quickly as they'd appeared. Within seconds, the arena was empty except for the council and the trembling torchlight that somehow rekindled itself. But the voice lingered, echoing in Mira's mind. Enjoy your victory, little catalyst. But know this, the old darkness rises, and your precious bond won't be enough to stop what's coming. I've been waiting 3 centuries for another like you, and this time, I won't let you slip away. Then, nothing. Mira's legs gave out. Cale caught her before she hit the ground, his arms the only solid thing in a world that had just revealed itself to be far more dangerous than she'd imagined. "What was that?" she whispered. Celine's face was grim as she approached. "That was why the prophecy exists. Why I've been searching for a catalyst for decades." She looked at Mira with something like pity. "The council trial was never your real test. That was just the beginning." "The beginning of what?" "A war," Celine said quietly. "Between light and shadow. Between the world as we know it and the darkness that existed before shifters walked the earth." Her shifting eyes locked on Mira's. "And you, Catalyst, are the only weapon we have that can actually hurt it." Mira looked at Cale, saw her own fear reflected in his golden eyes. They'd fought for their right to love, to exist together. Now they'd have to fight for the survival of both their worlds. Chapter 10. Before the dawn. The council had dispersed hours ago, taking their questions and fears with them. Only Selene, Darius, Cale, and Mira remained in the fortress's ancient library, surrounded by texts that spoke of times before memory, of darkness that predated the first shifters. Mira's hands still trembled. Every few minutes, sparks of white gold flame would flicker across her fingers, her catalyst power responding to emotions she couldn't fully control. "Tell me everything," she said to Selene, her voice steadier than she felt. "No more secrets, no more half-truths. What am I really fighting?" Selene looked older in the candlelight, the weight of centuries visible in her shifting eyes. She opened an ancient tome, its pages yellowed with age, covered in symbols Mira couldn't read. Before there were shifters, before humans built their first cities, there was the first dark, Selene began. A consciousness born from primal chaos, hunger and rage and endless void given form. It consumed everything it touched, turning living lands into wasteland. "How was it stopped?" Kyle asked, his hand finding Mira's, anchoring her. "It wasn't. Not completely." Selene traced a symbol on the page, a circle broken by jagged lines. The first catalysts, humans with innate magical ability, bound themselves to the strongest warriors of that age. Together they created a prison, sealing the first dark deep beneath the earth. But the binding required sacrifice. Every catalyst who participated died in the ritual. Mira's blood ran cold. "You're saying I'm going to die." "I'm saying that every catalyst before you has died fighting this darkness." Celine's expression was sorrowful. "But you have something they didn't, a true alpha bond, freely chosen and recognized by the council. The prophecy speaks of a catalyst and alpha who fight not from obligation, but from love. That's never existed before." "So we might survive this," Cale said, his grip on Mira's hand tightening. "Together." "Might," Selene emphasized. "But the first dark has been imprisoned for 3,000 years, growing stronger, more cunning. It's been testing the bonds, searching for weaknesses. The shadow beasts tonight were just scouts." She looked directly at Mira. "It knows you exist now, and it will come for you." "Let it come," Mira said, surprised by the steel in her own voice. "I'm done running from fights." Darius, who had been silently reading through another ancient text, looked up sharply. "There's something here, a passage about strengthening the catalyst bond." He turned the book toward them. "It says the power grows through." He stopped, color rising in his cheeks. "Through what?" Mira pressed. "Through complete union," Selene said matter-of-factly. "Physical, emotional, and spiritual joining. The catalyst and alpha must become one in every sense for the bond to reach its full potential. The implication hung heavy in the air. Mira felt heat rise to her own face, but also something else. A pull toward Kale so strong it was almost painful. "How much time do we have?" Kale asked quietly. "Hours," Celine said. "Maybe less. The first dark will attack at dawn, when the moon sets and our power is at its weakest." She stood, closing the ancient tome. "I suggest you spend what time remains preparing. Together." She and Darius left without another word, the library door closing with a soft click behind them. Silence fell, broken only by the crackling of candles and their mingled breathing. "Mira," Kyle began, but she pressed her fingers to his lips. "I know what you're going to say. That I don't have to do this. That you'll find another way." She cupped his face in her hands, feeling the warmth of his skin, the subtle roughness of stubble. "But I need you to understand something. Even without the prophecy, even without the coming battle, I would choose this. Choose you. Choose us." His eyes blazed gold. "You're sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." She smiled, though tears pricked her eyes. "You asked me once what I felt through the bond. If I was losing myself or becoming who I was meant to be." She pressed her forehead to his. "I'm becoming more, Kale. More than I ever was alone. You don't diminish me. You make me infinite." Kale's breath shuddered out. His hands slid into her hair, tilting her face up to his. "I love you. Not because fate demands it, not because prophecy requires it. Because you're brilliant and brave, and you see all my broken pieces and call them beautiful." "They are beautiful," Mira whispered. "Every scar, every wound, every moment you survived when you should have fallen. They made you who you are." He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of everything words couldn't capture. The soul tie flared between them, brighter than ever before, and Mira felt the last barriers between them crumble. She felt his fear for her safety, his guilt that she'd been dragged into his world's darkness. But beneath that, she felt his love, vast and unconditional and absolutely certain, and he felt hers in return. "Come with me," Kyle murmured against her lips. He took her hand and led her from the library, through torchlit corridors, to his chambers in the eastern tower. The room was bathed in moonlight streaming through tall windows. Someone, probably Darius, had lit candles throughout the space, casting everything in soft, warm light. Kyle turned to face her, vulnerability written across his features. "I need you to know. If this is too fast, if you need more time." Mira silenced him with a kiss, pouring every ounce of her certainty through their bond. When she pulled back, she began unlacing her tunic with steady hands. "No more waiting," she said softly. "No more fear. Just us. Just this." What followed was tender and fierce by turns, a joining not just of bodies, but of souls. Every touch sent sparks through the bond. Every whispered word strengthened the connection that would either save them or doom them both. Mira learned the landscape of Kale's body, every scar and its story, every place that made him gasp or shudder. And he learned hers, treating her like something precious and powerful at once. When they finally came together completely, the catalyst power erupted around them. White gold flames danced across their skin without burning, and silver light poured from Kale in waves. The two colors intertwined, creating patterns in the air. Ancient, symbols that wrote themselves and faded, a language older than words. Through the bond, Mira felt their souls interweaving, becoming something greater than either alone. She felt Kale's wolf surface, not threatening, but protective, claiming her as mate and partner. and something in her own blood answered. That ancient catalyst magic recognizing its counterpart. Its completion. They moved together, two hearts beating as one. Two souls merged into something entirely new. When they finally collapsed together, tangled in sheets and each other, Mira felt fundamentally changed. The bond was no longer a separate thing, but part of her very essence. She couldn't tell where she ended and Kale began, and she didn't want to. "I can feel everything," she whispered in wonder. "Your wolf, your heart, your very soul. It's like breathing," Kale finished, his hand tracing patterns on her back. "Like you've always been part of me, and I just finally found you." They lay there as the moon, tracked across the sky, speaking in whispers and touches, saying all the things they might not have time to say later. Kale told her about his childhood before the suppression, when he'd been happy and whole. Mira told him about the girl she'd been before cynicism hardened her, the one who believed truth and love could change the world. "Maybe she was right," Kale said, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Maybe we can change the world." "Or die trying," Mira said, but there was no fear in her voice. Only acceptance. "Or die trying," Kyle agreed. Together. A howl split the pre-dawn air, distant but drawing closer. They both went still, the peace of the night shattering. "It's starting," Kyle said quietly. Mira sat up, the white gold flames already dancing across her hands, stronger now, more controlled. Through the windows, she could see darkness gathering on the horizon. Not natural shadow, but the living void of the first dark, spreading like spilled ink across the earth. "Then we end it," she said, standing and reaching for her clothes. "Whatever it takes." Kyle rose beside her, his body already beginning to shift. But he paused, taking her face in his hands one last time. "When this is over, if we survive, will you stay?" His voice was rough with emotion. "Not because of the prophecy or the bond, but because you want to?" Mira smiled, fierce and certain. "Try to make me leave." He kissed her hard, pouring a lifetime of love into that single moment. Then they broke apart, warrior and catalyst, preparing for the battle that would decide everything. Outside, the Shadow Army approached. Inside, two souls forged into one weapon of light prepared to face the darkness. Dawn was coming, and with it, the end, or the beginning, of everything.